Welcome back to another farther afield version of Berrien Birders.
The Everglades are more impressive than they may first seem.
I had a work trip. I had to go to Miami to present at a conference, and we took half morning to shoot down to the Everglades, to the Anhinga Trail in the Everglades, and it was a fun morning. Here, living up to its name before the sun has even risen, is an Anhinga. There was also a tree just full of activity. Kristen, what did this remind you of?
The breakfast buffet that we had just finished at the hotel.
Yeah, all the tourists, all the common riffraff from the Midwest, the blue jays, the cardinals, the red-billed woodpeckers, they're just going around trying to get breakfast before they hit the trail. I was really hoping that there would be some early migrants, some tanagers or orioles in a tree that was fruiting. Unfortunately, it was not quite meant to be.
That looks like a nest.
Yeah, it could be a nest, or more likely it's just a tangle of bromeliad, since the red-bellied will go for a cavity rather than build a stick nest. I don't know if there's any woodpeckers that build stick nests. I don't think there are. But going back to Anhinga, here's an Anhinga having a typical bad hair day. You can see that this is probably a male that's about 10, 11 months old.
He's just jealous.
I'm not jealous. Okay. Well, I totally am jealous. You can see how these male anhingas, they still have some retained brown feathers in their crowns. This one's kind of slowly working out the kinks and getting the oil. Well, he actually doesn't have oiled feathers, but these guys just made some bizarre sounds as they were displaying or advertising their territories. You can see even that as it kind of stretched its throat out there, it had kind of almost like a pelican-like pouch, presumably to kind of help scarf down the fish that they're trying to catch. So if you're an anhinga and you had an itchy face, how exactly would you go about taking care of that?
Carefully.
Carefully. And you'll notice that while he's moving his foot kind of up and down, scratching, he's not actually moving his foot. He's moving his neck. He's saying, I can control my head a lot better than I can control my foot with his talons. Just kind of stretching out there before giving way to another very fun display call. And you can see that white and gray flight feathers that they're striking birds.
So are these a kind of heron?
They look like a heron. They're probably closer related to cormorants, but it's just kind of, if you want to catch fish, it helps to have a long lever arm to stab your bill out. And anhingas actually will stab fish as opposed to just grabbing fish, as we looked at red-winged blackbird and then now boat-tailed grackle as well. But anhingas actually will stab all the way through the fish with that impressively dagger-like bill, rather than just snagging and just grabbing them the way that many of our herons do. Here's Great Egret. This guy kind of reminded me of the old Wild Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom shows that we would watch as kids, as it's just stalking slowly, just being ever so careful with its kind of foot placement to try not to disturb the water too much. You can see a little bit of ripples up kind of beyond it, as there's something in the water over there. And it's also interesting to see what might get disturbed if there is something that moves. There was something under the water. You saw insects or something dash away, and something was disturbed that it went for. I am not convinced it's hard to tell if it caught something little or if it just kind of swallowed a drink of water. It wasn't the only one that was hunting there. Here's our good friend the alligator.
Yeah. Makes me think of Crocodile Dundee, honestly, but you really could have jumped in and wrestled a few of these if you felt like it.
Yeah, I'd recommend against feline like that, because this guy decided to move over a little bit, and the egret was like, I don't really feel like wrestling him. I'm gonna go back where I came from. I'm gonna go back over there. As he kind of worked his way away from the alligator, said, yeah, you know what? Let me just double check. Let's take the high ground. Just make sure that thing's totally gone before kind of heading back and seeing if it can find something to grab. I'm not sure what it's going to go for here, but they would stalk around looking for lizards even on the shoulder, and whatever it was, and decided, it's not there. And I didn't quite realize that these birds are fairly territorial with regard to their little hunting territory. That this tricolored heron landed where it had been fishing, and it displaced it almost immediately. That you could tell that egret was used to where the gators were and where the fish were. And this is where Christyn spotted a swallow-tailed kite that flew by. And I totally missed that it was flying up to a nest. Here you can see it's about ready to land on a nest once I looked at the video the next day. That I should have stuck around, and if I'd noticed that, we'd have gotten a lot more pictures of swallowtail. But back to the anhingas. Again, a bird kind of having an intermediate hair day with still some brown retained feathers. And you would occasionally hear black-crowned night herons going "walk," which will kind of come up later in the video sound. But here's immature black-crowned night heron. You would also hear a whole lot of catbirds mewing away at us. You may have heard white-eyed vireo about 30 seconds ago in the track as well.
This bird wasn't very far from us.
Yeah, it's about 5 feet away. It's almost like it was used to people being around. And I mean, again, this is the Everglades, so you have to look at gators again with black-crowned night heron walking in the background. But going back to Christyn's original question about whether anhingas are related to herons, while they're not related to herons, they act a lot like them, and presumably kind of the same thing that drives herons to frequently nest in rookeries of kind of having isolated patches of trees in which to build nests. These anhingas also had a rookery going on, that there were multiple nests here in this area as this bird is doing some sort of a display. I don't know what this display quite is. It's not making the sounds that preening bird was earlier. But you can see like his face is entirely blue as he's in his high breeding plumage, that he's really in full breeding mode. And here's some nests in that same area, and this kind of is a good example how both males and females tend to the nest. We've got a male on one nest in the foreground, and then a female in the background, also presumably incubating eggs. I don't think we saw any sign of babies on this trip. Clearly, the parents are way too relaxed to be harried by a bunch of children. So we talked about the alligators lying there in ambush wait, and they weren't the only ambush predators in the area. That here is, I think it's a painted turtle, considering a stalk. I can just hear a David Attenborough, only about 20% of chases are successful, as this turtle decided that water lily was just too elusive of a prey. This was a gator that was just right next to the path. And finally, purple gallinule. When I went to Florida with my kids earlier this winter, we saw a ton of purple gallinules on this trail and featured that in one of our first ever videos. But here's the only gallinule that we saw on this trip, going full lily pad frogger mode as he's trying to dodge gators and find the kind of different vegetation or insects that they're likely going for.
It's pretty neat how he doesn't sink when he walks on top. Oh, what did I say?
What did you say? He doesn't sink when he walks? It's almost like there's a physics lesson here that a high school physics student might be able to teach us something about water displacement and all sorts of other things that have been coming back into my life as I've been going back through some high school physics that I thought was long behind me. So that's what we've got for this trip to the Everglades. Hopefully we'll have a chance to go back and do a whole lot more.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you might be able to get within hugging range of an anhinga. I didn't hug it, but I felt like it.
It was close. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you next week.